Hello, welcome to Light from Above. My name is David Kenney. Glad you could watch the program. The preacher for the Church of Christ in Wadsworth, Ohio. Today I want to talk to you about a rooster. Talk about roosters a little bit, but back in 1985, when I was a teenager, I looked behind me. My dad was a preacher, and I looked behind me in the seat, and I noticed in the foyer my dad was laying down, like unconscious, and that was really unnerving. And so they rushed him to the hospital, and they thought he was having a heart attack, but he wasn't. But he received a card from his mother. He called her Mommy. And in the card was a note of well-wishing, but it also had an obituary in there. And he thought that's sort of unusual. And it was sort of funny, and I wanted to share it with you. It's an obituary about George. George was a rooster, which is sort of interesting. It's called Just Between Friends by Bethel Cochran. And this is what she wrote. King George is dead. King George, you say? Who on earth is King George? Wasn't he the King of England at one time? Everyone knows what a patriarch is, the male head of a family or tribe. Well, George was the patriarch of the hen house, ruler of all, master of his domain. Well, almost, for as in every kingdom, George had his troubles within, rebellion, terrorism, looting, and all-out gang warfare. But George never lost heart. He persevered until the very last minute. Now, George may have been just a rooster, but he was no ordinary rooster. He was a special in ways that you had to see to believe. He was stubborn, obnoxious, bullheaded, sly, loud, and sometimes downright obscene. For a long time, George had everyone and everything buffaloed into doing things his way. If he decided he wanted to wander, then no fence, no broom would hold him at bay. If he decided to camp out beneath the stars at 10 degrees below zero, then he camped out and laughed at the cold. George was old when we got him. How old we can only guess. But the thing about George was that you never viewed him as an old rooster, but rather as a very dandy old man bent on having his last days spent as he wanted them spent. On several occasions we decided to do away with George, but when we came right down to it, we found we didn't have the heart. After all, George was more than a mere rooster. He was a family friend, and he knew we were his friends. The older he got, the friendlier he became, and we worried about him the way you do about an older person. But like all good things, it had to end. George died like he lived, in the fast lane, usurped and beaten down by a kid not even dry behind the ears. Removing George from the hen house was a hard thing to do for me. I didn't cry, but I was saddened. Here I was, a chicken lover, after all those years of despising them. And you'd be surprised how quickly you get to know them one by one, know how to watch for, and which ones to protect. Yes, we have plenty of roosters left, but none of them are George and never will be. Then I'm not all that sure I will ever want to get that attached to a chicken ever again. It makes one feel a mite foolish to have such fond feelings for something so simple as a rooster. Nope, someone like George comes along only once in a lifetime. This is not a requiem for George, only my way of saying, so long, George, it was fun. Jesus used animals and industry common in his day to illustrate stories, spiritual truths. On that slide there with the rooster, the lessons for the rooster is a passage clear going back to Proverbs, talking about the ant and the things that we can learn from animals. And there are things that we can learn about a rooster. And I just want to sort of talk about some of those. And you might find some of these things sort of funny. And I did. I thought the Requiem was really good. But you'll find out it's really sort of pointed. First of all, a rooster rises early and praises God. You've heard the expression, early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Well, that's from Poor Richard's Almanac by Benjamin Franklin, but it goes back even further. The funny thing is, we have all these labor, time-saving devices, but yet we feel like we have less time than ever. It's sort of ironic when you think about it. I mean, we have the cell phone, we have automobiles, we have all these ways of saving time, but do we get the things done that we want to get done all the time? You still have to have priority. You're still going to have that, or you're never going to get around to doing the things that really matter. I mean, we live with that even in our time-saving, labor-saving, high-productive, industry and everything like that. we still have to have priority. Well, the rooster does. He rises early and he praises God every day. Not too bad, right? How do we measure up to that? Well, here's another one. A rooster does not refuse to sing. Now, I don't have much experience on a farm, but my grandmother, she lived out in the country, and we would go visit her, and they had chickens and they had roosters, and I can remember, I would be awakened by the rooster, and I was like, it would sing no matter what. And sometimes you think, on TV they make it sound like a rooster just crows one time and then they're done. No. No, not this rooster. No, it kept on doing it. And I was like, shut up. What is it going to take? But what, the rooster, he wouldn't listen. He's going to do what he's going to do. And he was going to sing. He would not refuse to do that. But some people, when it comes to church and singing, they'll say, maybe they were told by somebody, you don't sing very well. Or maybe they think they don't sing that well. Maybe they just don't want to. Or maybe they're too embarrassed or whatever. But you know what? We are commanded to sing. It tells us that in Ephesians 5:19 and Colossians 3:16. That's a command. But you know what some people do? They refuse to do it. But the rooster doesn't refuse. He doesn't care if you like his singing or not. He doesn't care if you appreciate it or not. He doesn't care if he is singing on key. He don't even care what key there is. He just does it. Why do we allow these things to stop us from doing what a rooster does almost like automatically? My dad had this little poem in his file on this, along with this rooster story. And it says, singing in the church. It says, though your singing may be awful and your voice all out of tune, and though you finish the words a note or two too soon, you should never feel ashamed to sing out loud and clear, for the song that's coming from the heart is all the Lord can hear. Maybe somebody's embarrassed you. Maybe they made you feel ashamed. Maybe they humiliated you. Maybe, you whatever. But we need to remember that roosters do not refuse to sing. And as Christians, we are commanded to sing, and we should do that. We should not be the kind of people that refuses to do the things the Lord has commanded us to do, things that really should come from our heart anyway. I sort of wonder, this just a theory, but you ever notice in the New Testament it commands us to do things that, we should want to do anyway? As a Christian, we're supposed to love everybody, right? It's commanded. It is commanded. Well, but shouldn't we want to do that anyway? Well, singing is commanded. Well, shouldn't we want to sing anyway? I wonder, I don't know, but I sort of wonder if maybe God put that command there as a command to deal with the people that try to say, oh, you know what, that person shouldn't sing or that person shouldn't sing. And we're going to pick and choose who can sing. We're going to have a special group to sing, and you're not going to be a part of that group. I wonder if one of the reasons the command is there for everyone to sing is so everybody's expected to sing, and there is going to be a penalty for people who mess with that. I wonder. But a rooster, he does not refuse to sing. Another thing the rooster does is he proclaims good news. He always does that. A new day has arrived, and that is good news. That's good news for everybody, isn't it? It should be. I know you get up early in the morning, you may get up before dark, you may get up, and you're tired and all that, and you may say, I really would just like to stay in bed. I've been there myself numerous times. Maybe you had something at work you weren't looking forward to having to do, maybe this or that or the other, and we might think, a rooster proclaims good news, there's another day, but you need to give some thought after you had maybe a cup of coffee or two, or you woke up. Maybe you need to ask yourself, what's the alternative to having another day, not having another day? You think about that some. It may help us adjust to our day a little better if we remember that. But you know what? The gospel is good news. That's what gospel means, good news. And it's the good news about the day when we have no more days. The day when we don't hear the rooster crow anymore. Paul said in Romans 1:16, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first, and also for the Greek." We need to have the dedication, we need to have the determination to proclaim the good news of the gospel. We need to have the tenacity of the rooster to proclaim that. We need to tell people that, because who is going to tell them? I don't know about you, but we did some shopping a couple of years ago, and I was with my mother, and we were watching. It's around the holiday season and all that, peace on earth and goodwill to men, all that stuff. And we were at Walmart. My mother loves Walmart. I mean, there's all you Walmart haters out there, you're not going to be able to convince my mother anyway. But we were at Walmart one time, and we were eating at the Subway store, in-house Subway store. And when she was pointing out, she said, "Do you see all these people waiting in line to get checkout?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they're pretty mad because they're having to wait in line." She said, "No, but just look at their faces. It's beyond just being irritated. It seems like people, they don't know that there's good news, the gospel. They don't know that. And how are they ever going to know it unless we interrupt their day and tell them that?" Roosters are not ashamed. They don't back down for proclaiming good news, and we need to be able to do that too. Also, another thing about roosters is they never complain. They never complain. They're not to be confused with a crow. You know what crows do? They crow, right? They crow. And we use that figure of speech. This person's always crowing about something, complaining about it. Some people are better at crowing than crows are. But the rooster, he doesn't complain. He does the same thing over and over and over again. He never gets tired of it. He never complains about it. You may do the same thing, and you may have been doing the same thing for 5 years or more. And you might be tired of it. Might be. My question to you, if you're doing the same thing that you were doing 5 years ago, are you doing them any better than you were 5 years ago? You see, the rooster, he doesn't complain. He doesn't complain. Sometimes we can become free complainers. If we got paid to be a complainer, unemployment be gone. Sometimes we fall into that pit. The Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 15:58, "Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." Complaining. The rooster never complains. You ever meet somebody like that? You ever meet somebody that they complain all the time? And that's all they do. And you try to maybe say something encouraging to them, to maybe get them off of this track a little bit. I mean, maybe you're a complainer, and this person makes you look like, they're a professional complainer, and you're getting uncomfortable. And you're like, you know what, not everything's all that bad. And so you try to, get that person to realize that, but they will not be deterred. And you know what happens sometimes? That you will tend to avoid that person. And we might think, well, that's mean. We shouldn't do that. But I want you to think about how you are and how I am. If we're complaining about every single thing all the time, and if we know that if we tend to avoid people like that ourselves, but yet we act that way ourselves, then we need to change course. The rooster never complains. Also, the rooster praises others. He praises others. It's reported that, the rooster, he always crows at the first daylight and all that. And like I mentioned before, They do it more than that. It's said that even a rooster will cluck, or whatever you want to call whatever that is they do, but they'll cry out whenever the hen is clucking out that she has laid an egg, and it will go right along with it. They will cackle together about that. And you might think, well, that's sort of odd. What's a rooster care about that? But it's interesting that it does that. The rooster praises others in that way. And we're supposed to be that way too. We're supposed to praise others. We often talk about Hebrews 10:25. You look that up, and it talks about not forsaking the assembly of the saints. And sometimes we'll read that passage, rightfully so, and point out that, when the doors are open to worship, we should be people that want to go worship God. We shouldn't be the kind of people that forsake, that abandon it. And that's true, Hebrews 10:25. But I like to read the passage right before it, Hebrews 10:24. It says, "And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works." Let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. Well, how is that going to happen? It does that because we encourage one another. We praise one another. There's an account of Theodore Watts Dunton. He wrote of King Edward III in his The Lives of the Poets of Great Britain and Ireland in 1753. He wrote that the king was an encourager of men. That's how he was described, an encourager of men. Now, it doesn't really say how he did that, what he did. But wouldn't it be great if somebody opened up a book from, 1753 as this one was, but if somebody opened up a book years from now and it had our name in there, and they just had, one or two sentences say about us, wouldn't it be great if one of those things was he or she was an encourager? Wouldn't that be great? He encouraged me. He lifted me up. He helped me when I was going through difficulty. He helped me get through it. He helped me to be able to excel. He was an encourager. He praised me. And he kept me going forward. There was someone in the New Testament, his name was Joseph. And he was known as they gave him a nickname. His nickname meant the son of encouragement. And that was Barnabas. Barnabas, some people that read the New Testament, they may miss the fact that Barnabas was not really what his name was. That's what the apostles called him, which meant son of encouragement. That's in Acts 4:36. He was a person of encouragement. He praised other people. Whenever people were afraid of Saul of Tarsus, when he became a Christian, who was it that went before the church and said, Saul has become a Christian. He's not anybody to be afraid of anymore. He's preached and he's proclaimed the good news. He's one of us now. Who would be willing to do that kind of a thing? Barnabas did. A son of encouragement. He praised other people. And it's not the only time that he did that. And he did that in different ways. Some people, they may be doing really well just to say, hey, you did a really good job at this. Or maybe, there's all kinds of ways to be an encouragement to someone. Matter of fact, in that same church I was talking about that my dad thought he was having a heart attack, there was a member there named Maurice Royce. He's dead now, but I can remember growing up, and I remember watching him and hearing him, and it seems like he always had a toothpick in his mouth, and he would talk. He was from the country, and he had farming and all that, and I can remember, him talking, and he was just a lot of fun to listen to, and he was just a pleasant person to be around. But my dad said this about him. He says, Maurice Royce's epitaph should read, he was an encourager of men. I don't remember what he'd done. He's done so much You can't keep track of it. An encourager. The rooster praises other people. How do we want to be remembered? You know, people spend a lot of money to have their names put on plaques and put in buildings. And they think that maybe that's how they're going to be remembered. But you know, I've been in buildings that have plaques up there, and I've gone down their halls and I see, and sometimes I'll have an image of them, and sometimes it'll have their name, and maybe it might tell you a little bit about them. But you know, I'm usually walking past them so fast that I don't pay any recognition to it at all. You might be someone who praises other people and nobody ever notices it, but you know what? God will always notice. He will always notice. You know, being a Christian is challenging enough. Try to be the kind of person that praises other people. Try to be the kind of person that encourages other people. They want to be around you, not shun you. We are supposed to be attracting lights for Christ. You know, people, they don't come to church. I don't think they do. They don't come to church to hear a bunch of carping, crowing, griping, fighting, bickering, grumbling. I don't remember anybody coming to church to do that. Now, there might be some people that do it for that. I don't know. I mean, I would think that if you're into that kind of stuff and that's what you're going to church for, you could find someplace else to do that kind of a thing. We need to think about how we are when we are assembled together. If people, you know, people don't really come to a church service to have an environment that may be similar to what they left behind at work. Right? I used to work in industry, and you know, you would have good days and bad days. And sometimes the bad days would be consecutive. And sometimes they would pile up. And you know, sometimes the good days would be too far away. You know, and that can wear you down. But you know, when I went to worship, you know the one thing I didn't want? I didn't want a bunch of griping, complaining, grumbling, everything's miserable, everything's doom and gloom. I was leaving that behind at work. We need to make sure that when people come and they see us, that we're like that rooster. We praise others, we encourage others. So when we think about, you know, just in summation and closing, the idea of lessons from a rooster, what are some things that we learn from the rooster? One, he rises early and he praises God. Number two, he doesn't refuse to sing. You can't stop him. No matter what you say to him. Believe me, I've screamed at a couple of them. They don't quit. We need to be that way. He proclaims the good news, whether people want to hear it or not. He still proclaims it. And he never complains. He is always happy, it seems, to get up there and do the same thing all the time. He doesn't complain about it. And also, he praises others. You know, there's another lesson you can learn from a rooster, and it's a little negative, but I think it's important to remember. And the obituary sort of pointed that out, too. But you know, a rooster can become so cocky and arrogant that it could lose its head. You remember they said that, you know, they wanted to get rid of George, but they just didn't have the heart to do it? We need to be careful that we do not lose our head with pride. With pride. It's another lesson that we can learn from the rooster as well. Again, lessons from a rooster. Rises early to praise God, does not refuse to sing, proclaims the good news, never complains, and praises others. Thank you very much for watching our program today. Before we close our program today, we'd like to take a moment and review this roadmap to heaven with you, since the matter is so serious. There are many incorrect set of directions out there, and sadly so many people are following them. For example, some people have been given wrong turns. They believe things such as faith only, works only, or grace only. Or some attempt to change the order of the turns, being baptized before they even believe. Some people fail to realize what point they are on the map. Don't even open their Bibles yet, and they think they're saved already. As a person travels in a car or takes a hike, it has to follow the proper directions, so we must follow the proper directions to heaven. Let's take a look at the directions on our roadmap to heaven here. You have to look at these passages in your Bible for yourself. We'll just list the steps, the turns on the way. First is to believe or to have faith. And then number 2, to repent, to turn away from sin. Number 3 is to confess that Jesus is the Son of God. Number 4 is immersion, or to be baptized, which is a burial in water to have your sins washed away. And then you're added to the church by the Lord, not by a group of people, or not by giving some kind of testimonial experience or things like that. And then once you're added, you need to serve and worship the Lord faithfully all the days of your life. And the key word's faithfully. You don't waver. And that's very important. We need to keep in mind, too, that in Noah's day there was a big flood, and only people in the ark were saved from the flood. The same is true today. There is no salvation outside the Lord's church. Where are you on the roadmap to heaven? Thanks for watching our program. Please let us know if we can assist you with further information for your journey.